deeper than we can study in a 30-minute class, or maybe the time that you put in to prepare for that class. These are wonderful life lessons, I guess, if you will, that can be applied to our, not only our daily life, but applied to our kingdom history and kingdom applications. In the final lesson, I like to look at the broad aspect of what these lessons, the intent of the author of the lesson, to what his intent is to bring home as a general aspect. And I think the way this last chapter is put together, and all the chapters for that matter, does a good job at showing the not only the brevity of life and the vanity of life and the things that are important as opposed to the things that are not. And he does that while using kingdom imagery, using the Messiah imagery, and linking the lineage of David and Solomon to the Christ, and some of the same pictures that we see. Even Christ would reference Solomon and Queen Sheba in his teaching. So, big picture, we're not going to leave that on it. We'll leave that to itself. We'll look at that more. As I typically do, I'm going to give credence to the text and read the text as it lays, and we'll discuss, answer questions, and apply some of the big picture lessons there. Solomon's fame is the name of the chapter. Webster's dictionary defines fame as what? Fame. What? Notoriety. Well-knownness. That can be good or bad, isn't it? Well, we're going to look at Solomon's fame, and the technical Webster definition is public estimation. Fair enough. And that could be good, bad, or ugly, I guess. Public estimation. How you are seen, how you are popular acclaim, public estimation. So, in this particular chapter or passage, we're going to see how Solomon was known. There was no one who did not know of Solomon's all the things that he had and did. Verse 1, 2 Chronicles chapter 9. Now when the queen of Sheba heard of the fame of Solomon, she came to Jerusalem to test Solomon with hard questions, having a very great retinue, camels, and that bore spices, gold in abundance, and precious stones. And when she came to Solomon, she spoke with him about all that was in her heart. So Solomon answered all of her questions. There was nothing so difficult for Solomon that he could not explain to her. Now, I'm going to stop and start. I usually just read straight through, but I've got a couple of notes here. I'm going to stop and start. I see a few things here. You know, in the type and I don't know if I didn't dig deep enough to really expose the literal type and top of Christ and Solomon. Now, Solomon is the lineage of David, and it's the lineage of Christ, so it's fair to treat this as a type and a type when we see those things. And we see here people bringing gifts, bringing gold, bringing something of value to Solomon. That takes us, I think, in my head, I went to when Jesus was born, and they brought gifts to the king. And we're going to see that imagery throughout this passage and throughout this whole study book that we have. But she brings lots of things. And did not people come when Jesus was teaching and ask him hard questions? Remember that? maybe you recall some of the questions he was asked. We're not told what she asked, but if you look at the diplomatic aspect of her visit, she's from 1,000 miles away down toward Egypt, and there were ports of call, there were trade routes, there were all types of things that were pertinent to a diplomatic visit to this king that she heard a lot about. When she went and she took and asked questions, we're not told what questions she asked, but what were some of the questions that they asked Jesus? Do you remember? You know, are you the Savior? Are you the Messiah? And in some of those, he returned answers that they could not digest, right? Especially John 6, when he says, you know, if you don't eat my flesh and drink my blood, you know, they like, hold on. You know, so Solomon was presented with some very pressing questions. You'll have to insert in your own mind about what they were. I would probably venture to say that they were related to God, because she was convinced of his God by his wisdom and by the things that he had accomplished and gained. You see that in this passage later. It should have been diplomatic and trade related. She wasn't no chump herself. You know, she had plenty of interest in the trade aspect of it. Let's move on. So Solomon answered all her questions. There was nothing too difficult for Solomon that he could not explain it to her. Why was that? Because he had asked God for wisdom, and he was granted that. And when the Queen of Sheba had seen the wisdom of Solomon, the house he had built, the food on his table, the seating of his servants, the service of his waiters, and their apparel, his cupbearers and their apparel, and his entryway by which he went up to the house of the Lord, there was no more spirit in her. Then she said to the king, it was true. It was a true report which I heard in my own land about your words and your wisdom. However, I did not believe their words until I came and saw with my own eyes, and indeed the half of the greatness of your wisdom was not told to me. You exceed the fame which I have heard. Now we have her experiencing the house that he built, experiencing the people around him and their fortune, okay, what they were wearing, what they were eating, the greatness of his kingdom she was an eyewitness. You ever heard somebody say, you have to see it to believe it? And that's exactly what she was. She said it straight to his face. She had to, you know, I had to see it to believe it, and it's certainly true. And she attests his wisdom and acknowledges his wisdom and his fame. She goes on to say, verse 7, happy are your men, and happy are those, these your servants, who stand continually before you and hear your wisdom. Blessed is the Lord, verse 8, it's top of page 30, 130 rather. Blessed be the Lord your God, who delighted in you, setting you on his throne to be king for the Lord your God, because your God has loved Israel, to establish them forever. And therefore, he made you king over them, to do justice and righteousness. This feels like a James Meadows test coming up. He was a king of fill in the blank. I mean, you read thinking fill in the blank. He came to establish blank and blank, justice and righteousness. So, and it probably would be something about the food and about the clothes and all that. Anyway, I digress. So, she attributes what he had gained, what his status, his standing in the kingdom, to whom? To God. She acknowledges God. Your God must really like you, and he really has found favor with your people, that you're in charge of them. So, again, did not dig deep enough on the potential religious background of the Queen of Sheba. Maybe you can help me with that. That's Egypt. They typically, I think, practice mythology and had, cat gods and stuff like that. You see these models with the dragon heads. Does anybody know about the religion of the Queen of Sheba? Well, I'm certain it wasn't Jewish or didn't have a Hebrew background, but what does she end up doing? She acknowledges his God. It must be true. The things I've heard of you are true. The things I see are true. The people that serve you are blessed. God has put you on the throne. It's not, he had put it. Typically what happens, how do the kings get their throne? Through the sword, right? And they pillage and plunder and conquer. God, she acknowledged, had put him on the throne. And I think that's a very significant point in this lesson about, and let's call her unchurched, okay? An unchurched or unreligious individual acknowledging the existence of the God of heaven through what God has done for him. Any thoughts or questions about that?
I've heard that she could be a representation of the Gentiles.
Exactly. A simile or picture thereof of a group, right? So can we exude God in our daily life by the things that God hath given us and blessed us with? Can we do that? And those are the types of things, those little smaller pictures in these lessons that I have gleaned. I would hope that certainly that you will too. Those small, look for those individual pictures in this big picture of things. When God blesses you, when God is given the credit, when it's obvious that you have a purpose, and God is that purpose, and that is obvious to others, that can be very, very valuable. It is, and should be. And there's probably some New Testament passages to back that up, but we're going to move on. She gave the king 120 talents of gold. Spices, this is verse 9, page 130. Spices in great abundance and precious stones. There never were any spices such as those the Queen of Sheba gave to King Solomon. Also, the servants of Hiram. Now, do you remember these people? Who were they? Yeah, you remember the guy that was an engineer type, and he came from where? The king of Tyre, over there, Cedars, Lebanon, and all that. Remember them? Okay, so the servants of Hiram and the servants of Solomon, who brought gold from Ophir, brought algum wood and precious stone. Now, I looked at algum. Anybody know? To me, I think it's some type of cedar. They had pictures on, I could look at and see. It's kind of black, outer part, and you dig down, it's red, and you know how cedar looks, all red and pretty. These were to make harps, musical instruments, the railing and banistery work in the temple. All right, so. And it came from where the cedars came from, so it makes sense that this was a specialty type wood. If you're a woodworker or a craftsman, you can appreciate that they brought algum wood and precious stones. It's a black, ruby red type of wood from the cedars of Lebanon. And the king made walkways out of the algum wood for the house of the Lord and for the king's house. Also harps and stringed instruments for the singers. And there were none such as these seen before in the land. Now King Solomon, verse 12, gave the Queen of Sheba all she desired, whatever she asked, much more than she had brought to the kingdom. So she turned and went to her own country, she and her servants. Okay, there seems to be wisdom here. Solomon was wise, but you can't, that's provable, right? He was inspired of God and put in place by God to do godly things. And what he did was, he was a good diplomat. She came, probably had lots of questions, and he answered them. He returned her gifts, with gifts exceedingly. This is good diplomacy. This is good diplomacy. And certainly, if you read back in church history, when you get back to like Joshua, and there's a purpose for it, but it seemed like everybody fought. I mean, you can come to a land, you beat them up and take their stuff, you know. That's what you did. Well, this king, King Solomon, in his wisdom, practiced diplomacy and hospitality and kindness and bigness of heart, the Bible says, right? Now, maybe you have a thought or a question about that.
I think at one point coming out, it was different, but she got more than she gave, and I think that's definitely true.
Your hand up a little bit, but that's true. She received more than what, I mean, and she brought quite a bit. If you value up the things that she brought, I mean, we're talking millions of dollars in today's, you know, and that was a splash in the bucket to what Solomon had, and he showed her a return on that. Yes?
When you were talking about that, I was reading here about how much a talent in gold was. It is equal to the weight of a person, or like.
What person? Now, wait a minute, hold on. You said it weighed a person. Let's be careful.
Yeah, here,
Okay.
straight off the computer.
Are we talking,
What I was thinking about, the magnitude or how large.
so a couple hundred pounds
Her character.
or 138 pounds?
Yeah.
So it was not light. It was, that's one talent. And how many did he get? 660?
So now, she would have to have approximately 120 donkeys or
Camels.
Camels, just to carry the goat.
And then he gave her back what was worth more.
They should more, they'd be more pleased with the questions he answered for her that she asked him.
You think there might have been some value in that? In those answers? What, Sonny, you're wise one in the room. What do you think, what do you think she asked?
I have no idea what she might have on her mind if he asked him Solomon.
I think it might have been,
Wisdom too.
she may have. Give me this wisdom that you have, right? But he wasn't an apostle, so he couldn't transfer it, right? Anyway, it probably had to do a lot with geography and trade and were you going to invade me? And because she was a world leader, basically. And certainly those difficult questions, I mean, it's a diplomatic meeting. Rick, did you have your hand up? No.
Well, I always wondered, did she ask him questions about God? Did she receive blessings from God just like he did?
Well, it's evident that
Probably not.
it's evident that God was part of her realm of thought because she attributed the things that he had accomplished and the things that he had been blessed with to God. And she attributed the good fortune of his servants and the good fortune of his people to be in his presence to God. So that was in her realm of thought. We know that. It would seem unreasonable to think that she didn't ask something about it. And in return, she's blessed by giving. She experiences the kind of the gift of God in your giving. You can go there with giving. That can be in your giving sermon if you so see fit.
The way that you meet, typically, to get to know, you ask them about their past, where they came from, how they got to where they are. But surely that's something she would have had on her mind to
Yeah.
inquire about, and if you could explain to her how he came into power.
Now, King Solomon, when he got all this, when people would bring wagon loads of gold and silver. He, put them up in storage and held it and made sure that nothing happened, right?
He displayed it.
He made stuff with them. What did he make, Homer?
That said, shields that he put up in the forest.
Yeah, that's right. He built shields and bigger shields and used those things to accompany the protection of his people. He put them to good use and did things with them. Verse 15, King Solomon made 200 large shields of hammered gold. 600 shekels of hammered gold went into each shield. He also made 300 shields of hammered gold, 300 shekels of gold went into each shield. Then the king put them in the house where? In the forest of Lebanon. Now, wait a minute. That's where the wood came from, wasn't it? Remember that? That was cedars of Lebanon and the algum trees that came. So another diplomatic return, another good thing that he did in those forests for those people who had contributed greatly to the construction of the temple. So he was returning the favor, if you will. Moreover, verse 17, the king made a great throne of ivory and overlaid it with pure gold. Now this can be a picture of the throne room in heaven. We don't have time to really pull that through. Top of page 131. The throne had 6 steps, and a footstool of gold fastened to the throne, which were fastened to the throne. There were armrests on either side of the place of the seat. The 2 lions stood beside their armrests. 12 lions stood there, one on each side of the 6 steps. Nothing like this had been made for any other kingdom. Now, there's another important sentence there that zeroes in on the greatness of Solomon, the absolute greatness of Solomon. Nothing like these spices had ever been. Nothing like this throne had ever been. He was the, and I'm going to tie this in a little bit. But he was the greatest that had ever been. The things that he had were the biggest, the best, the most. His people were the most blessed. His servants were the most happy. Okay? The throne that he built in that temple was the most beautiful. Nothing had ever been like that. Keep that in mind as we go further. Verse 20, all King Solomon's drinking vessels were gold. They didn't even have silver drinking vessels. I'm going to speed up a little bit because I don't want to run out of time for these questions. And he talks about how all that he had, basically this passage talks about people bringing, verse 24, each man brought his presents, articles of silver and gold, garments and spices and horses and mules at a set rate by the year. Solomon had 4,000 stalls, 12,000 horsemen. So he reigned, verse 26, so he reigned over all the kings from the river to the land of the Philistines. And look at this. And as far as the border of Egypt. The border. Now who was in Egypt?
Queen Sheba.
Queen Sheba.
That could have been one of the
Could have been one of the questions.
question, are you going to take me out?
That's right. That's right. Now, I've got a border here, Mr. Solomon. Is that still going to be good? Right? In your godly wisdom, is part of that wisdom going to be annexing Egypt? So it tells us here, and the Bible is specific for a reason. I mean, these are not random verses. As far, it could have said as far as the outskirts of eternity, as far as the border of Egypt. I think that's don't overlook that. The king made silver as common in Jerusalem as stones, and he made cedar trees as abundant as the sycamores. Okay. And they also brought horses to Solomon from Egypt and from all lands. Those Egyptian horses, you know, maybe the Rogers can one day or evaluate for. What am I trying to say? Elaborate on that. Egyptian horses are nice, so they're supposed to be really nice horses. They're like this. We call them. All right. Questions. Let's do the questions real quick, and then I'm gonna make some observations about, the non-inspired aspects of our lesson in these passages. Quickly. What did the Queen of Sheba do when she came to Solomon? Question number one. What did she do?
Knowledge God.
She asked questions and asked all that was in her heart. How did Solomon respond? He answered them. There was no question too broad or too small, and none that he didn't know the answer to. None of this, well, we'll have to wait and see. He gave them the answer. Number three, what did the queen observe that took her breath away? Now, this is one that's got many answers. So what did she observe?
There was a couple of things come to my mind, how the servants were treated and what they did, and it's not the
Okay, his house, his food, his waiters, not waiters, let's go out the water in, his waiters, his apparel, even his entryway. Now, what was that entryway made of? That algum wood. That was a beautiful wood. She noticed, and that just took her breath away. It says the spirit was not in her. She was just, oh, my mother would call that flabbergasted. She was just blown away.
They probably ran all that through the plan.
They probably ran all through a planer. Yeah, I'd say they did.
Well, the first thing that comes to my mind is how did they get that, to that condition, you know? They didn't have a plan.
When God's hand is involved, they probably used to wake all of
Well, Irwin's doing it over there in his hand.
He was probably there supervising. He was there supervising. Sonny was supervising. Why did the queen say Solomon's servants were happy?
They were well taken care of.
They were well treated. I have that. I also have, they were happy because they were able to be under Solomon. God put him there at a time when they were there, or put them there at a time when Solomon was there. Now, we have some greatest generation, or close to it, in our midst, or if not, maybe your family is. You know, to say that my dad used to say, he was 84, he died in 2007. That term "greatest generation" is absolutely true. They lived at a time, of course, after the war, the big one, where there was a time when it was good, everything seemed great. The economy, this is Eisenhower time, whatever. A good time to be alive. All right. That's one of the things that I took from that is his servants and his people were under him, and that was a blessing of God. That it wasn't, for instance, Rehoboam.
They get to hear his wisdom.
Yeah, they got to hear his wisdom and be influenced by that. So
They got to enjoy all these, because I think you just said that because of him.
yeah, they were happy. Why did the queen say Solomon's servants were happy? That's why. Why did the queen say God made Solomon king of Israel? What was the purpose that she attributed to his being made king? It's because he loved, verse 8, 2 Chronicles 9:8, he loved Israel. It was his plan to do that to what? To establish them. Okay? And to do what? Fill in the blank? Justice and righteousness. Very good. When she attributes that motive to God, that's when it tells me that she experienced something about God. Is that
I think it's one, if we're honest,
think so too.
God was the only answer.
It couldn't be, this had, all right, I'm glad you said that. What did they say when Christ was crucified and the veil ripped from the bottom up, or the top down? And there was darkness at 3 o'clock in the day, and the moon turned to blood. What did they say?
This was.
Surely, no doubt about it.
There's a centurion, I think,
No doubt, this was the Son of God. And again, try to pick the little baby pictures from this and look at how she attributes why did the queen say God made Solomon? He loved Israel. Why did God send Jesus? For God so loved the world. All right? Why did he send Jesus? To establish what? The church. It was a part of the big picture of sending Christ, the King, to establish, because he loved, and to establish his people in the church, all right? And what? Justice and righteousness. These many antitypes should not be ignored in the picture of Solomon and why God did with Solomon what he did with Solomon. Because it's a picture of what he did with Christ. Christ would say in Matthew, look, Queen of Sheba was going to be judged just like the rest of us. The rest of them. And I'm greater than the one that she came. And so he's greater than Solomon. All right? So that ties that messianic message. Look for that in these passages. Number 8. Number 7. What did Solomon give the queen? All she desired, correct? Much more than she gave. We hit that and hit on that in our giving. What material did Solomon use to build his throne? Ivory and gold. What material were Solomon's drinking vessels made of?
Gold.
Well, not silver. You know, now we got silverware. Silver was like a stone at the time. And that indicates the enormity of the wealth. What did Solomon place throughout the land of Israel?
Cedar trees, wasn't it?
Horses and chariots is what it says. Now that was in Tyre and the forests of Lebanon. Throughout Israel, he put horses and chariots. Now, why might it be that he set thousands of horses and chariots throughout? Why might that be? Protection, right? All right, and God has set forth the same for us in the kingdom. I believe that. I certainly believe that. Okay, just a couple of quick things, and then we will dismiss. Ecclesiastes is used heavily by the author of this passage, of this book. And Ecclesiastes chapter 1, this is page 132, beginning verse 12. I, the preacher, was king over Israel and Jerusalem. And I set my heart to seek and search out the wisdom concerning all that God had done under heaven. This burdensome task God has given to the sons of man, by which they may be exercised. I have seen all the works that are done under the sun, and indeed, all is vanity and grasping for the wind. That's Ecclesiastes 1, 12 through 14. Solomon did not attribute his wealth and his prosperity to himself. He attributed to God, but the word of it is what? What is vanity? When somebody define vanity. Vanity.
Just vain thing.
Emptiness and valuelessness. No value. And then the famous passage, Ecclesiastes 12, 13, 14. Fear God and keep his commandments, for this is man's all. For God will bring every work into judgment, including every secret thing, whether good or evil. Jesus said this as well. What is the greatest commandment, Charlie? Fear God and keep his all of the good fortune in which he experienced, and all of the proper diplomatic activity that he rewarded people